welcome, and thank you to the UAE for this amazing expo. It's my second time here, and I just don't fail to be amazed by how wonderful it is. Kia ora, and thank you, New Zealand, for the Aratini Festival. It's a wonderful initiative. And thank you so much to Team Australia for having me as part of your contribution to this week. My name is Haidi Wilmot. I am the daughter of Eric Wilmot, who is the author of this beautiful book, Pemulwuy, The Rainbow Warrior. It's a book about one of Australia's first heroes, an Australian Aboriginal warrior who led the resistance against a British settlement in Sydney. It was written in 1987 and a new edition has just been published. So I'm actually launching it here, which is a great pleasure to be able to do that here before the world and at this wonderful festival filled with Indigenous ideas. On that note, I'll crack right in. So I'd like to start with why Dad wrote the book, and I will tell you in his own words because he has a background note that explains a bit about that. The name Pemulwuy means earth, man of the earth. Pemulwuy lived in Australia in the last half of the 18th century. He was born around 1756 to a people who believed that their world was brought into being by a transcendental creator who took the temporal form of the rainbow. He died in 1802. He was the Rainbow Warrior. This novel was conceived out of his legend and the historical events of the period between 1788 and 1802. The legend of Pemulwuy is part of the belief system and oral history of the Aboriginal people of the east coast of Australia. It is also part of the history of all modern Australians. The city of Sydney is built upon his land. The initial creation of this great modern city occurred during the last 14 years of Pemulwuy's life. For modern Australians, this has always been a period of stories, hidden truths, and mysteries. Even the language we use today is embedded with words from that time. Pemulwuy is a fundamental part of that mystery. His story is not different in substance from that of other patriots. Such men resisted the British invasion and colonial rule in Australia in the 18th and 19th centuries. There are two things that set Pemulwuy apart from his compatriots. The first was that he led the Eora people in the first major response to the British invasion and fought the British for 12 long years until his death in 1802. The Aboriginal Australian resistance is said to have been broken by Governor King in 1805, when Pemulwuy's son Tedbury was captured and became the first Australian prisoner of war. The second difference was the attitude of Pemulwuy's enemies toward him. The British not only sought to destroy him physically, they and some of their descendants attempted to obliterate the very evidence of his existence. Until recently, Pemulwuy's name has never appeared in any white Australian history, yet he lives on in the unpublished records of his enemies and in the minds of Aboriginal Australians. This was indeed a conspiracy of silence. It was apparently not in the interests of a crookedly intent or racist establishment to promote such parts of the Australian story. If this is true, then these people have stolen from generations of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Australians a heritage as important, as tragic, and as heroic as that of any other nation on earth. So that's why Dad wrote the book. And now we'll move into the story. I have 3 scenes to read, but I'm not sure I have time, so we'll hopefully get through 2. The first one is the scene in the book when we first meet Pemulwuy. It's from chapter 3, titled Pemulwuy. Kiraban and Kubi wandered towards Dordawoy, who was talking with the sergeant and McIntyre. He was drawing things on the ground. The 2 Australians had almost reached them when they became sharply aware of the presence of strangers near them. Kiraban stopped and peered into the surrounding trees. His eyes picked out 7 or 8 people. They were motionless, almost part of the forest, on the edge of the clearing. After a moment, Kiraban turned and saw that Dordawoy was also aware of the newcomers. He called out to them, and he was answered in a clear Sydney Eora dialect. 4 of the strangers then appeared in the clearing. They walked up to the main group, which included McIntyre. There was a strange tenseness in the air. The group around McIntyre seemed to brace themselves. Suddenly, Caravan knew why. The man at the head of the band of strangers had a powerful sense of danger about him as he moved forward in long, liquid strides. He was tall and well-built, with a strange cast in his right eye. This was Pemulwuy. No one had to identify him to Caravan. He had a great trailing cloak that further marked him out from his companions. Jordawoy stepped forward and made a polite joke. Pemulwuy responded accordingly, but the tension did not abate. Pemulwuy stepped away from Jordawoy and over to Caravan and Kubi. This was a great breach of Eora etiquette. He stood before Awabakal. "So, you're the stranger from the northern lake," he said in Bidjigal. Caravan did not move a muscle. He stared directly at Pemulwuy and did not drop his eyes as he would to an older Awabakal man. "I am Kori," he said in English and Awabakal. Pemulwuy placed the shaft of his spear on the ground and let the tip fall until it struck Caravan in the chest, piercing his skin. Caravan did not flinch. Pemulwuy suddenly extended his right arm and turned his hand down in a snake-like gesture, his face alight with a strange wildness. He said nothing. Then, "Welcome to my land, Awabakal." He smiled and Awabakal joined him. Pemulwuy lifted the spear and embraced him. The tension relaxed, and both Kubi and Jordawoy joked with Pemulwuy. Then McIntyre joined the group. "Pemulwuy, my friend, I hope you're hunting for me," he said with an affability that rang totally false. Pemulwuy half smiled and focused on McIntyre. Again, the strange wildness swept across his face. "I hunt for Pemulwuy. You, I give meat," said Pemulwuy in the crisp, hissing English of the Bidjigal. Pemulwuy waved his arm across the group towards the plain beyond. "Tell me, McIntyre, what is it you seek in this part of my land?" The sergeant now stepped forward and Pemulwuy reached across and lifted his spear. "And you, soldier, what do you want with this place?" Sergeant Smart drew himself up in a formal manner. "Sir, you are advised to give us whatever information you can about the killing and the whereabouts of a convict." Pemulwuy laughed. "Sir, I am advised only by the spirits of this land." He smiled broadly at the sergeant. "These spirits, sir, are all Eora. They know nothing of convicts or anything you do." "I insist that you..." "You insist," said Pemulwuy. The sergeant valiantly tried to regain command of the situation. I do," he blustered. Pemulwuy stood some 6 feet tall. This left him only an inch above Sergeant Smart, and yet he seemed to tower above him. "My good soldier," he said gently, "would you have me take you to the place where your convict rests? Or would you have me take you to a place where you can rest?" McIntyre quietly intervened. "Pemulwuy, this is a serious matter. This is not the business of the Eora. It is the business of the British. We do not interfere with the Eora, and you should not interfere with us. If you know where the convict is, you should tell the sergeant." Pemulwuy threw his head to one side. "I know nothing of your convict. Perhaps he seeks a place among the Eora." Then, ignoring McIntyre, he walked back over to where Awabakal stood and placed his hand on his shoulder. "Tell me, Awabakal, what do you do with the British?" Awabakal opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Go home to your people, Kuri." "Do not know the British," said Pemulwuy. With this, Pemulwuy swung around, looked back over his shoulder and called, "I shall see you in Sydney, McIntyre." Then he stepped into the trees. As silently as they had appeared, Pemulwuy and his people were gone. Darkness consumed the little group. They stood as though across 2 worlds. And I've just been given the sign to wrap up, so I will wrap up there. But hopefully you enjoyed that. And if you'd like to hear more of this fantastic story by who I can say with hand on heart, amazing writer, my dad, you can buy it through the Booktopia website. Great read. I hope you enjoy it. Shukran. Thank you so much, everyone. Kakite, and I wish you the very best for the rest of the Festival of Te Aratini. Thank you.